one. There we go. And we are now live. Welcome to the third edition of the Go to Network show, the GTN Show. Welcome, Mac. Dialing in this week instead of Copenhagen from Connecticut. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. On the road. Was just in Montana, which I know is a topic we're going to talk about. Not Montana specifically, but why I was in Montana. So yeah, if the audio and video quality is less good than usual, I'm sorry. I don't have a good portable recording setup yet.
But next week you're back in the home studio with
No,
all
next
the
week
bells and whistles.
I'll still be here. I fly back next Saturday. So next Friday
Okay.
I'll still be here, but then 2 shows from now, it'll be back to the nice Restream. We were just talking about this before we went live. Restream's auto background cutting out is not good. So if I look like I'm fading away, like I'm in Back to the Future, I'm very sorry. Don't let it distract you. Just minimize it and listen to our beautiful voices instead of looking at our terrible faces.
Awesome. Well, great to have you here. Let's jump in to that first topic that you mentioned about the anti-conference you're at this week. So tell us a bit about it, like how it came about and how it went.
Yeah, so it was the Arcadia Leadership Experience. I kept just calling it Arcadia. It took me a second to remember what it was called. It was put on by Jason and Sam Yarborough, who, if anyone's in the partnership space, will be names they recognize. It was in Montana. It was at a place called Bodie Farms. It was 45 to 50. I'd say 50% partnership leaders and 50% other revenue leaders. A few marketers, a few CROs, a few VPs of sales. I guess a CEO or an L-rated dinos or 2. It was at this place called Bodie Farms outside of Bozeman, and it was. I guess it wasn't an anti-conference. I would call it a glamping conference. This is maybe the best way to put it. So we stayed in tents. And the first night, I think a few attendees were a little surprised by how many bugs were in their tent. It's you're in a field in the middle of the woods. I don't know what you were expecting, right? And all the talks were in tents or outdoors. So it was it was a experience more than it was a conference. Yes, there was talks, there was some conference elements, but it was much smaller. It was much more intimate. I do think this has been a trend just in general that I've seen over the last year or two is people are a little sick of just I don't want to go sit in an air conditioned conference call surrounded by booths and 10,000 people. Yes, those have a place, but this was much more I got to know every single attendee there. Some folks I already knew beforehand from LinkedIn, some folks I didn't. It just felt much more, I don't know, human. There was they did great stuff where yes, the mornings were talks. Then we were assigned a cohort by different bears, so their logo was a bear. So I was the grizzly cohort, for example. So each afternoon after lunch, we had 2 or 3 hours with our cohort just to go deep on specific topics and things like that. It was 6 or 7 people. So there's just a lot more. There's just a lot more depth, I think, came out of the event. It was fun. It was a good event. Learned a lot. That's the overview. I mean, we can go whichever direction you want to go with it. But it was. I think this is the future of events. I think the big conferences like Inbound, Dreamforce, they're not going anywhere. But I think the middle class, we saw this last month, the Ascent conference, last minute canceled because they couldn't sell enough sponsorships. I think if you're not a big existing brand in the event space, nobody cares. Is just to be super blunt, right? It's the experience stuff. Scott Leese is doing surf and sales, which is pretty cool. It's 8 to 10 sellers surfing and talking about sales. I did Buy Founders, which is a VC in Denmark, does an event every year where they sail a boat with a bunch of founders and VCs from Europe, from Copenhagen to Oslo and back. And it's those are the events that are memorable to me. I can't name a single talk from a conference I've ever been to. But I can totally name the people that I hung out with on that boat, or we went and did natural tea making in Montana, and I will remember that way more than I will remember insert presentation that was given at insert conference center at insert major city. It all just blends together otherwise.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on in that. I think what you just went to is the new wave of kind of these things, and that middle of the pack, small to medium conference. I think it's never going to come back, or 10 years from now maybe, but post COVID, the budget and marketing that stayed is for those big events that you have to be at. I used to work in information security, and there's one conference every year in London. You just have to have a mega booth at. Like that is how the market knows you're a real player. But the second, third, fourth of those ones,
I will say, do you think that's going to go away? Like, I feel like there's a lot of this in B2B of like, you have to have a G2 page. You have to have a Gartner page. You have to have a booth at the big event. But I feel like in general, at least in like sales marketing, I feel like maybe like IT and security might lag behind a bit, but like, I feel like that matters less and less the last few years.
It's true. I can tell you, IT in that space definitely lags behind because I went to that. Geez, that would have been 2019 was the last one I went to, maybe 2018. And unfortunately, they still had booth girls, and it actually made like the local news in London around like, yeah, conferences are still doing this. So yeah,
they're a decade or more behind the rest of us.
Yes. Luckily, after that, they're like, that's
no booth girls at this camping event. Don't worry, there was no booths at all. So,
but yeah, I think I get your point. I think maybe you don't have to be at these mega conferences, but I really like play bigger in this idea of like a lightning strike. So put your money into something that's really going to get noticed. And it may be that you decide a mega booth at one of these conferences is one of your lightning strikes.
At GTN 23 Pavilions event last year, our goal was not leads. Our goal was purely, we were just sort of coming public with our pivot. And we were like our target audience is not community managers anymore. It's salespeople. Where can we go get in front of 700 sales leaders in one go? Conference makes perfect sense for that, right? But for us, it was a pure brand play, like get people to know we exist. And that's also why we leaned into like, our booth was actually not about our product. It was more of like a fun activation. Like we literally didn't talk about our product. It was just like, hey, we want you to know that this dinosaur company exists. Like recognize the brand. Know we're here. Know we're here. Know we're here. I think we did a great job on that, right? Like people still talk about that booth today, and it's been like 9-10 months. So for that, this is just like caveat. This is true for any strategy, right? There was always a time and a place where a strategy or an activation makes sense. But I think the days of like, you have to do this every year, no matter what, even if you don't have a strategy or a reason for it, that I think is waning.
Yeah. And I think for me, one of the reasons this has happened is we've had the right move away from volume to high quality, smaller numbers. When I was an early stage sales rep doing these events and I was on the booth floor trying to get people to come up, we were literally told, scan everyone that walks past. Guess what? You then add them to your mailing list. You lower your open rate. You increase your spam rate. Your email.
They all get the generic 7 days after the event. Like, thanks for stopping by our booth. And you're like, I glanced at your booth. I didn't stop by because they just get like the event attendee list because like that's what you're given sometimes, right? It's like I sponsor the event, so I get all the attendees. It's like, yeah.
And I think rightfully we've moved away from that. And that's why like this, anti-conference, we jokingly call it, worked, because it's like, look, you're going to just make high quality, good connections with these people that, and they're fitting with Comsor, even if they're not the right fit for you. Now that they know you and they know your product, when they go back to their office, they probably know five other companies that now when the problem you solve comes up, they can actually refer you in. And it's that high quality relationship that matters so much more. And I think rightfully marketing dollars are being spent more in that direction instead of volume.
I see so many more companies spending money on like dinners, right? Like, and you and I were just talking about this earlier today, where it's like sponsoring even a small sponsor, not the mega booth you're talking about. Those mega booths are like $250,000 plus you have to like stock them, etc. But like, and I get probably weekly, I get someone being like, hey, do you want to sponsor this event? Because like once you're on the list of like, we've sponsored an event once, you're just on the list forever, right? But even the small events that have 500, 600 attendees, not 10,000, your cheapest booth is usually $20,000 to $25,000 plus $5,000+ to stock the booth with whatever stuff you got to put in it, plus $10,000 to fly some of your team there, get hotels. Like you're in for $40,000 to $50,000 real quick for an entry level booth. And if you're at an event with 700 attendees, like a best in class booth, you'd have a quarter of those attendees stop by your booth. That would be like a world class booth. Like I'm really being generous here. Yeah. So you get like 200 people to stop by your booth. Let's say half of those are actually a good fit. So you got like 100 potential leads. Like that might seem great for $50,000, but you could also you're getting like surface level interaction with it, right? They stop by your booth for 30 seconds, like, yeah, here's my business card, call me later. And you call them, they're like, I don't remember your booth at all. Or you could take that $50,000 and you could do 10 incredibly luxury $5,000 dinners in 10 different cities with 10 to 15 target buyers at once. Which one's going to have more impact? I'm 90% certain the latter.
I was chatting with a CEO of a Series A company just last week, and he was saying how, like cold outbound, these people they're trying to meet with, some people just like they're never going to get back to you, right? Decides to start hosting dinners, and immediately 7 people that have never responded to a single email when you say, hey, look, we're doing a small dinner just with people with your title. We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
5 minutes later, they're like, yeah, definitely could be there. Also, let's have a call before. Let me understand more about what you do.
Exactly. Like, so we did SaaStr last year, but we didn't go to SaaStr, right? And like SaaStr emailed us, they wanted us to sponsor. It was like 50 grand for the smallest booth. And I was like, what the fuck, right? Like, but we went to a few dinners. We hosted a few dinners. We got like around the event because like everybody's in town for SaaStr, so like you might as well do it. And it was like total cost. It was just me who went, so it was like the cost of me flying from Denmark, a hotel for 3 nights, and then I went to 2 dinners and hosted one, and we got like 19 leads out of it, and it was like total cost was like $2,200, right, for the whole experience, and it was just way more impactful. It's also just easier, right? It's like hosting a dinner is a lot less work. Like we're hosting 2 dinners at Inbound this year. I don't even know if like we haven't actually bought tickets to Inbound yet. We don't know if we're going to be at Inbound, but we'll be around Inbound.
Yeah, I love it. And it sounds obvious, but you don't even have to stop at dinners. Back at Tessian, we had huge success with business breakfasts. Everyone worked basically in the city of London. So you put right at the top of a lovely skyscraper an 8 a.m. breakfast, promising you'll be out the door at 8:45. People would come to that.
I have to keep rotating because the sun is rising and it's like in my eyes if I keep the light. Like, I can't see anything. So I'm sorry that I keep rotating. And as I rotate, the background is getting like less good at actually being cut out. So I'm sorry that I'm like the technical glitch version of myself today.
It's like normally you've got the ultimate setup. So you seem human this time instead of like in a perfect studio.
Yeah. It's I gotta overcome the like lizard robot element that people think I am, right? It's like it's at this event I was like, because I was still jet lagged so I was on like European then New York time, and then I was like 2 hours further behind it. I was up at like 4 a.m. every morning like working, and then like our whole team, Katrina and Raina, were there. They were also up early because they were also on East Coast time. And every morning people were like, wow, the concert team just like really gets up and just like gets to work. Wow. And we're like, yeah, definitely. They're like, what? Do you guys sleep? And we're like, yeah, whatever. Like we're just like, we were the first 3 awake every single morning.
Amazing. If you were to run one of these conferences yourself, or anti-conferences yourself, like what do you think is the magic ingredients you need to make sure you're including?
Right people, right experience. I actually had we're going to make a video, Raina and I. We're going to walk through like why we sponsored this event, because I think it's interesting to go through. Like I get a sponsored request every week. So why this one and not another one? We're going to go through like what did we do ahead of the event to make sure we got value out of it, and what did we do during the event that like drove value for us? Like what was our goal and our purpose, etc. Oh my God, I need to like find a place to. Oh, it's so much worse. It's so much worse. I'm like,
it's coming for you.
Okay, well, I'm so sorry. What was I saying? So we're gonna do a whole video recap of like we actually are gonna go through like the whole budget, like what we spent on it, what we did. Like, I think it's kind of an interesting topic. But on the last day yesterday, I actually had a conversation with some other attendees, and I was like, and no shade, like I did a talk at this event, but like no shade towards me or anyone else who spoke at this event. Does an event like this need the traditional speaking sessions? Was kind of the thinking. And I think this is weird thing of like, everybody knows the sessions at an event are not why you go. But also, if there's not sessions from well-known speakers, nobody buys a ticket. It's like this weird sort of like, the reason you buy a ticket is the speakers, but after the event, the value you got is never the speakers, right? Like, I mean, there's all maybe like a talk here or there. So I think an event like this, does it need the more structured event content? Or would it be better off if it was just like, hey, we're going to get 50 really high value people together. Maybe there's a session or 2, but we're going to focus more on like workshop stuff, like more intimate cohort based stuff. So it's more of like the experience and the people mixed together. Cause like, it's like every event, right? It's like you have all these incredible conversations around the event, at the dinner, at the lunch, at whatever. It's not, oh my God, this is pissing me off so much. So like, I know it's like, probably doesn't actually matter.
It's fully
like,
come for you now. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's right people, right experience. I think that's the most important combination. And experience could mean a lot of different things, right? Experience, does that mean it has to be camping? Not necessarily, but I do think having this thread of like, I don't think this event would have worked if it was in a city, because that's like the thing that made it interesting was like, it was different, right? But yeah, right people, right experience. That's the combination.
Yeah, love it. I think definitely like a physical change of location, I think makes a huge difference. So taking people, like you say, out of the city, your brain is already then thinking differently. If I was to do one of these, I would really like a lot of like Chatham House Rule fireplace conversations.
Yeah.
Hey, we're bringing in this speaker.
They did a lot of that with the cohort based stuff.
Nice.
We recorded, like Raina recorded my talk, and I think we're going to put it out there. Awesome. But I don't think any of the other talks were recorded in the traditional sense, like other conferences. I think maybe my talk was the one that maybe like shouldn't have been recorded because it was maybe a little antagonistic, but that's fine. It's going to be posted anyway, so you'll be able to watch it like next week. So yeah, I think you're right. Like it's, there's a community I'm a part of called Hampton. Oh my God, now my left arm is being like consumed. My right arm. I don't know why I said left, but I'm just like slowly being consumed by the light in the background. I'm just like fading to nothing. It's a community called Hampton. It's like 700 CEOs. And they do these things they call Hampton retreats, and they have some sessions and stuff, but none of it's recorded. It's like, I haven't been to one yet because they're just like the timing hasn't worked out. But from the feedback and the reviews I've read, it's like, it's exactly that kind of thing. It's the right people in a cool place. And like a lot of their sessions are it's not sessions around like, here's how to do business, right? It's like, they'll bring in like a breathing coach, and they'll do a session on like, here's how to like de-stress. Like it's things that are almost like, once again, it's like around the act of being a CEO or a founder. It's not like, here's how to be a good CEO. Cause like, I can just fucking go online and read all that for free. So like, what is the point?
That's very cool. And I think it's one of the most liberating things in life is being able to share, problems you're facing with people that are in a similar situation. And I can imagine as a CEO or, senior executive being in a space like that, that's the most valuable thing. Because no matter how much your family love you, you can't come home and explain the intricacies of why ARR going up only 4% is like.
The other thing that I think this event did well is, shout out once again, Jason and Sam, they did a great job, but it was a little bit too many just partnership people. I think that their goal had been, and it just, first time doing the event, I think their goal had been like, they had some, salespeople and marketers there, but I feel like oftentimes when an event is too many people of the same type, it becomes an echo chamber, right? It's like, if you go to a CS only event, the talks are just going to be like, CS good, CS, everybody, CS people get promotions, and everyone's like, yeah, round of applause, we should all get more money. And it's like, great. But like, does that actually help anybody get a promotion? Not really, right? It's like, you end up hearing what you want to hear. So I think, especially if you're going to do an event that has more of those like Chatham House rules, small groups, intimate discussions, I think it either has to be really, really the same, like people who are definitely having the same challenges as me, or it has to be the opposite of me, so that I'm learning new perspectives. Like when it's like almost like it's like a lot of conferences I've been to, it's like everyone's somehow both too similar and too different. Like it's like they're not at one extreme or the other enough.
Super interesting. You touched on customer success there as well, which is perfect because that is our next.
I was teeing you up for our next topic.
Look at this. Obviously, like my background, customer success, did customer success at Tessian, then have worked at PlanHat the last few years. It is a topic incredibly close to my heart. I think it has so much potential, but like you said, I've definitely been to those smaller conferences where we all look around and go, God, yeah, you're right. We are the most important team. And then it's like, why is no one else realizing how valuable we are? And
I should get paid 10 times more. Everyone's like, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I'm going to march straight into my CEO's office. And then you leave that building and go like, hang on, only that room seemed to really believe this. Your background, Mac, you've set up several companies before. Like, did you ever have like a customer success department or person, or like, how were you doing customer success in your businesses?
kind of, I mean, like we had at old comps when we were a bit bigger, we had a 3-person CS team. It was like a CS leader, a CS person, and more of like a support person. So we had like kind of like the two different ends of that spectrum. But most of the businesses and stuff I've done have always been small enough where like CS is everybody's problem. It's not like a specific person's problem. I do actually in general think that should be the approach companies should take kind of regardless of their size. I've always loved the approach of like, you always hear the stories of like the company where like everyone has to do a customer support call once a month or something. Like easier said than done, but I do think that is, as I really fade away here, I think that's the way to do it. At the end of the day, like whether you're building a product, selling a product, or supporting people who buy a product, like we're actually all in the business of customer success, right? Like if I sell a product and the customer's not successful, that's a bad sale. If I build a product and the customer can't be successful with it, I built a shit product, right? Like it's not. I think it's people very often. I almost think the act of hiring a CS team, especially too early, becomes a crutch on which the rest of the company can be like, not my problem anymore. When it should always be your problem.
I 100% agree. And that equally, I do think you should hire CS early, but that trap you're talking about, I've seen. And it's often because customer success is frequently there to bridge the gap between what the customer is looking to achieve and what the product can do. And that's not to say that the product is bad, but just quite simply, like you need to do an input, there's an output, and there may be an interpretation. So the CS team is to help bridge what the light's coming for you no matter what you do.
There we go. That's a little better.
Nice. I've definitely seen CS teams where, because now they're there and they're meant to bridge the gap, the engineering and the product team go, oh yeah, but we can launch this feature because CS will make sure that the value is delivered from it. And you're like, well,
I mean, it's like, no, I feel like you see a similar thing in enterprise products. So like, it's okay if it's not a good product. The sales team will paper over it because like a salesperson will guide you through buying it. It's like, I was, who is it? Causal. The CEO of Causal has written quite a lot about. They're like a financial planning modeling tool for startups and whatnot. Great product. But he's talking about how like they have a PLG motion, but he's like only 5% of our business comes from PLG. So why do we keep it? He goes, because it forces us to build our product in a way that it could be set up by anybody, regardless of whether a salesperson is doing it, a CS person is guiding them, or they did it by themselves. And I think it's a really cool approach of like, and obviously, yes, there are some products that's just like never going to be possible. There are just inherently some products that are like, but I think also if you're in the sales marketing general space, like very few products are so complex that is a valid excuse. So I like the idea of like your product should be built in a way, like it should be built as if it were PLG, even if it's not.
Yeah. I love
that. Then it's going to be easier as well for the CS person and the salesperson. Like it's going to be better for everybody involved. Just
like onboarding, not even onboarding a customer, onboarding a new employee and being like, just go set it up for yourself the first time. Like that's going to teach you exactly what that customer's going through. Yeah, I think that's super valuable. How else do you kind of bring a CS mindset as a CEO? I know it's a very big question, but I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
I mean, besides the fact of just like I always loved HubSpot's. They have this, I'm going to butcher it because I don't remember the exact phrasing, but they always say that for them, it's customer first, team second, individual third. And a lot of companies fuck that up and go individual first, customer team second, third, whatever. Like at the end of the day, right? It's like, customers are customers fund your business. I mean, unless you're like some stupid VC backed nightmare that like burns money, like, there's a lot of those and have been a lot of those historically, but good businesses are funded by their customers. Not saying you can't burn money to get to that point, but at a certain point you need to be funded by your customers. Otherwise you're just delaying the inevitable. So I think it's just like, I mean, customer success is the only goal of a company at the end of the day, right? Like the goal is actually not sales. If the goal is sales, that's like, you can point to examples of like, bullshit scam MLM companies. They're like, I don't give a fuck what happens after the sale. As long as the sale happens, like who cares, right? Or like the classic like used car salesman example, right? It's like, that's like 100% lack of a CS mindset. But I've said this a lot where I feel like a lot of people in the sales world have forgotten that their job is to help a customer save time, save money, make more money, have a better life, get a promotion, etc. And those are the things that drive a sale. Not like you don't actually sell a product. You're almost more like, it's almost as like, someone wrote about this. I read a blog post a few weeks ago where it was like, there is no such thing as sales. There is only buyer enablement, because you actually never sell anyone anything. You just guide someone to making a purchase, which is like maybe a dumb nuance, but it's sort of like, at the end of the day, like the buyer and the customer is the one who has the decision-making power. You are at best guiding them. And you know, if you're forcing a sale, that's actually a bad salesperson, even if you're making the sale.
Yeah, it's consultative selling. When you do that right, also selling is much more enjoyable, because you're like, look, I could show you every single feature under the sun. Like, what is the business problem you're trying to solve here? Let's see if we can solve that. If we can't solve that, great. Actually, we can end this relationship much earlier and not waste each other's time. You know, you have to learn in sales. The worst thing you can do is keep a deal that you're not going to win in the pipe for longer than you should have, because you're going to waste so much energy on it. And if you've not done a consultative process to actually understand their issues, and you're just going, yeah, but this feature were the best, you're going down the wrong path.
I think people forget you can say no. It's not just a customer or a prospect who can say no, right? Like, or it's like, I mean, like I have fired customers in the past. We had a customer early in Comstor who, I'll say they were very aggressive, is maybe the nice way I can put it, where someone on our team literally came to me and they're like, Mac, I can't keep working with this person. Like, I can't get on calls with this person. I cannot do this, like, for a whole host of reasons. And I'm going to spare details here. And we're like, hey, like, we're going to like, you're 6 months into a 1-year contract. We're going to refund you the whole cost. Sorry. We have no interest in working with you anymore. I said it a little more, maybe like nicer and like, you know, PR friendly than that. That person did instantly go to LinkedIn and be like, Comstor sucks. I'm buying a competitor instead. Here's why. And I was like, no, you're not buying a competitor because we're bad. You're buying a competitor because I fucking fired you. But like, people forget, like, it's you know, the saying, the customer's always right. Do you know the full saying?
No.
So everyone always says the customer is always right, and they ignore the full sentence. The original sentence is, the customer is always right when it comes to matters of taste and preference. Meaning, if a customer wants to buy your product and paint it pink and it's ugly as shit now, so be it, right? If the customer wants to hire you to decorate their house, they're like, I want my house to be 17,000 different colors, so be it. When it comes to taste and preference, what they do with your product after the fact, that's on them, right? But it's not the customer is just blanket always right.
Love that. I think I might get that tattooed. That seems something that people need to know.
You need the customer's always right on your back, and then like way below it, like it's like and just here's the other part, like the real honest bit at the end. And then actually, without making a tramp stamp, that's not a good one.
Man, I really like customer success.
You have a tramp stamp that says, "In matters of taste and preference." Don't do that.
At the beach, explaining that to people, like, no, it's B2B SaaS related. It's totally different.
I use that, so whenever a customer is being a bitch on a call, I just turn around and lift my shirt.
But then I'd be like, what do I put in the middle? Like, I've got all this real estate in the middle. I don't want to blow it.
I think you need like a portrait of someone. I don't know who, but just like a giant face.
Well, maybe it will be of Rav Dhaliwal, who I'm a huge fan of in the world of customer success. Spoken to many times, worked at Slack in customer success when they moved over to EMEA, now is at Crane. And I'm going to share my screen and we'll see how this comes up. I don't think it will take up the whole page. Let's see. If I do this, where does it go? Oh, it does. Cool. It boots us off to the side. Look at that.
Not bad. Not bad.
He shared a blog post recently. I'll put it in the comments around the
in your screen a little bit, by the way. There's like a lot of white space on the side. So if you just like Command ++,
there we go.
Perfect.
So he's made a great point, and we've seen this, in the last 18 months. Customer success has definitely dropped in headcount, but he's made a great point of like the opportunity here is that we need to get away from thinking customer success is different and unique, and it's our perfect little darling. And actually just align more with kind of what you said earlier, Mac. You either sell the product or you make the product or you support one or both of those things. And I think CS has acted like they sell the product, but without willing to really step into that. So some of the things he's talking about, go for it.
I feel like you see this with like what I'll call like every secondary revenue role, right? Community, partnerships, CS. They're always like, no. We're not sales. We're community. No. It's like, okay, maybe you're not sales, but you are revenue. I think that's an important distinction, right? It's like you said, you either make it or you sell it. And if you're not doing one of those two, guess what? You're probably not going to have a job for very long, because that's the unfortunate truth is like, and that's why I feel like when you look at an org structure, engineers and salespeople are the first class citizens. Everybody else is secondary. And it's like, it might not be nice to hear that, but that's the reality of historically, because engineers, it is definitive proof that they are bare metal. I'm making the damn thing you're selling, right? And then salespeople are the closest bare metal of like, I'm bringing the dollars in, right? And it's like, the further you are from one of those two, the more at risk your job is, the more you're gonna have to fight for budget, the less headcount you're gonna be able to get. Like, right? It's like the classic saying of like, it's so easy to sell to sales because they never have a problem with budget. Because if sales can be like, hey, this product's gonna help me make more money, the CEO's like, yeah, cool, I don't give a shit, buy it.
Yeah, I had that conversation with so many CS leaders when they'll be like, oh, it's so hard to get budget. It's like, yeah, because January 1st, the VP of sales is turning up going, I promise you 4 million in new ARR. The CEO gets excited. And then you go, oh, but by the way, I need 1 million now, but then I'm going to get you back with 4 million at the end of the year. Whereas
the example you have here on the screen of CS language versus revenue language is
perfect, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is what Rav's really pushing. And I think he's spot on, because I think for a long time, CS has been really proud to talk like this. And his point is, it's actually only isolated us. It's actually only made us further away from being seen as revenue generating, but then we also demand to be seen as revenue generating. And the best thing we can do is to start speaking the shared language. Sales is not going to come to our language. We need to move towards sales.
Yeah. I love that language. I love all those examples there are just really, this is like, it's funny. This was actually like the theme of my talk at Arcadia, but like for partnership people, it's like partnership people like, no, we're not sales, like partnerships and relationships. And it was like, and someone else at the event said, I think this applies to CS too. They said that partnership people have too much empathy.
Yeah.
And they were like, and what they meant was like, and they're not saying get rid of the empathy. The empathy is great, but like CS people and partner people and community people, they have shown the world that they get empathy. Like, great. That's a solved problem. You guys are good at that. You need to add a little bit more of like the business acumen and the fundamentals on top of that, because empathy by itself, unfortunately, does not a business make, right? So like they were saying like, yeah, if you're 100% empathy, like just try 80% empathy and put 20% like business talk in there. And you're like, cool, got it. Like that's going to move the needle way more.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think that empathy, sometimes we, CS people have worn it too much as a badge of honor, that when they're speaking internally, they don't want to call the person a customer. Like, no, it's John, like it's different. And it's like, well, yeah, but sales doesn't go, they'll say internally, my prospect, but they don't go to John and just call him the prospect.
Hello,
like,
prospect.
They also have
buy my product today.
Exactly. So like, it's like, look, you can, just like you speak Spanish with Spanish people and English with English people, you can speak to the customer with one set of language and speak internally as a salesperson, a revenue generating role, and use a different set of language. It's about making sure your communication is clear and you're on the same page.
If you want salespeople to speak your language, the best thing you can do is go sit at their table. Not like, it's almost this analogy of like you're in the lunch cafeteria, right? You're a table being like, come over here, and they're like, no, I have my table already, right? It's like, it's a lot easier to make change from the inside than the outside, I guess is what I'm getting at. So it's like you're that language change will go both directions if you get yourself into the conversation. But if you're not in the conversation, it doesn't matter. If you're always an outsider, no one's going to listen to you. Someone else at this event actually said a good line of like, if you want to be trusted to do the bigger, longer term work, you have to prove you can do the short term work. Like you earn the right to do the experimentation, to drive change. And I think a lot of times non-sales people, once again, community partnership CS, they come right out the gate being like, bad, change how you're doing it. And some people are like, what the fuck? Like, no, go away, right? It's like, if you can prove like, hey, here, I now can prove that CS and partnerships and community are driving revenue. And hey, salespeople, here's how it's actually helping you make your job easier. Then they'll go, okay, now I would like to learn the language of CS because it's been proven to be impacting me. But at very times, like you're trying to make change before you're proving impact. And that's also why like, these roles end up with like really dangerously short tenure. So they never get to the point where they can have enough tenure to drive impact or change.
Yeah, totally agree. I still on the, you get the right to make change. I still remember at one company I worked at, we hired, London based, we hired as we were scaling like a VP marketing from the US, who in their very first session to us had like 15 slides they went through. And one of the slides was, by the way, you now use Z anywhere you would have used S. We write American English. Next slide. And just the office being like, this is the weirdest thing that you decided to start with that we need to start doing. Like you said, you've not earned the right yet. Like
also
tell me how that's going to make me better.
Is that the important change to make right now? Like,
And if they'd said, by the way, our marketing material will now do this, just so you're aware, cool. But it was really communicated. You now spell this way.
By saying, if they'd said, because we're trying to move more into the US market, so we're trying to Americanize our customer-facing language. Yeah. Okay, now you've given me a reason for change. You've explained it, but very too often someone goes, "Don't do this because bad. I said so," and you're like,
"Yeah, now I want to do it more." It's like parents. You're like, "Yeah, screw that. I'm definitely going to do it now."
Yeah.
So I'm going to drop Rav's article in the comments now, so people can find it later. Cool. He's written a bunch of other brilliant stuff over the years as well. Anything else on customer success, Mac? Otherwise, we can jump to LinkedIn.
I would love for you to talk through. You wrote a post, and I think it's very sort of meta because it's about ComSource, sort of. But you wrote a post about like reasons why people had booked a demo this week from ComSource, and I think it's. I don't know. I don't have a specific reason to. I have a reason to bring it. I think it's interesting, but I'll start with before you talk about it. I'll start with. I've always loved. You ever seen that like, meme of like there's a path through the park and there's a gate over the path, but like there's no fence, so it's like, what is the point of this gate? I can just like go around it. And I very often I think everyone talks about the sales funnel and the marketing funnel and my sales process, and like people really, really, really badly want this perfectly measurable linear. Customer goes from unaware to aware to considering to it's like that's just not how things work, right?
No.
I think this post was a good example of just like buyers and leads and conversations come in from so many different directions and angles and whatnot.
Is that big enough? How are we looking? Perfect.
It's super tiny still, I think. But yeah, that's hit plus one more. There you go. That's the. So if you would just share some of these examples you heard about this week, I think it was really interesting.
Yeah, and it's been fun as well, right? So all of these were inbound demo requests, and I've learned always at the start of the call, go, how did you hear about us? In part because if they say this customer that is already using you recommended you, I mean that's a slam dunk. You're starting basically at the finish line. You just got to take the thing home. So I always ask at the beginning, how did you hear about us? Also because it's nice to pass back to marketing. Like, hey. Like, I know it's anecdotal evidence, but this thing you did is really, really resonating. I think it's important when you're speaking to prospects to bring that information back internally. So first one was great. He was super honest. He was like, yeah, I had a meeting a month ago. It was my last meeting of the day. I was super, super hungover from the previous day. I didn't remember anything from that meeting apart from how adamant the person was that I needed to look at ComSource. And what's brilliant is, he luckily remembered who that person was. I pinged them a message saying, hey, thanks so much for speaking about us. I wasn't connected to the guy at all. He immediately connected, and we've now set up a call as well. So the person that referred us, wasn't even a customer. They just had seen our marketing content. And so
I get a lot of those when I talk to people. They're like, yeah, I just saw someone else commented on LinkedIn saying that I should look at you. And it's like, neither of them were customers, right? And you're like, okay, cool. Why not?
It's incredible. And so this is I talk about it at the end of this post, but it's a group of people continuously banging the drum about what we do and why we do it. And yes, in part, you can call that marketing, but it goes a level deeper, and you just start to see how you plant those seeds and they just continuously come back.
Yeah. So it's not one on here, but we closed the deal 2 or 3 weeks ago from someone who I had coffee with their CEO 4 years ago. Like just like not even about ComSource, just a casual, like this is like as ComSource was just starting to figure out, just starting to exist. And they had I had literally not spoken to them in 4 years. And they had casually just kind of kept up what we were doing, checking in once in a while, seeing me on their feed, et cetera. And then last month, they just told their new VP of sales, like, hey, this thing you're trying to solve, like I actually know a company that might be able to help. And they're like, okay, cool. Came inbound, like closed in one call.
Yeah.
I literally haven't spoken to that guy ever. Like actually, I sent him a message be like, hey, appreciate you like mentioning us internally. He's like, oh yeah, I've been following you guys for the last few years. Like love what you're doing. And it was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah, and exactly like you're saying, if we jump to the third one here, no, God, there was a lot.
The second one, actually, is I've been following you for
Yes,
years.
the second one, perfect. Yeah, exactly. Been following us for years, knew all about us. That was a single call close. Like it was a 30-minute call where already knew who we were, what we were about. Just needed to see the product, kind of a brief walkthrough for that exact use case they had. Was like, great, I'm going to go speak to the CEO today. And yeah, I got the email back saying, yep, send the contract over, we'll get it signed. Like it was a 30-minute call that took 4 years.
Every salesperson's dream though? The one call close. I think you said this earlier, right? Yeah, you just said it's like the sales version of overnight success 10 years in the making, right? It's a one call close, 4 years in the making.
Yeah. And I think it's great that I think more companies are doing this, but I think it's awesome that Comstor as well as a company gets the 4-year build up. You know, you see a lot of companies where the sales rep goes, I just did this deal, you know, and ring the bell, and there's no understanding of like what's gone on. I think because we're so good at getting the message out, people are so excited. Oh, I've disappeared. People are so excited.
Faded away. No. You got so excited, you disappeared.
Wait, let me change that to a different camera. I'll be back. People got so excited, they want to tell us. There we go. I'm back. Don't worry.
Speaking of ghost Christian.
And then yeah, third one again. I didn't know this person that came inbound, and I also didn't know the person that recommended us. He was watching a LinkedIn video about how to find warm relationships using Clay, and you know that person was writing like SQL scripts and Python and everything. So he messaged the guy and said, "Look, I'm not technical. How do I do this?" Person just responded, "Yeah, just buy Comstor." And again, like I didn't know this person. I had no idea they were following us. That person that came inbound is buying, and I've now reached out to the person that made the referral, and we've got a call set up as well, because you've just got all of these people that become your sales reps out there in the world.
Yeah. I think it's just you know, like it's just like the sales, it's not a funnel. I think it can be a sales funnel once a deal is created. Then it can be linear, like, okay, I'm walking through the process, etc. But everything to get to that point looks to me more like a series of concentric rings, right? It's like people are coming in from different angles at different speeds, and like it isn't this linear one size fits all trackable thing. And I've said this in the past that I think the quest for perfect attribution is one of the most damaging quests in the go-to-market world. I think what happens is people spend a shit ton of money trying to solve a problem that I think is inherently unsolvable, because like you are never in a million years ever going to be able to have a trackable data point of like Mac mentioned Comstor to Christian at an event that they were just happened to be at, right? Like unless you happen to tell me on a call, but that's assuming your memory's right and or not. You know, maybe you'd seen this 3 times before, and that was just the thing that reminded you to reach out. Like there's so much just unknown. I think the other dangerous thing with this quest for attribution is that it leads sales and marketing teams to only do the things that they know to be trackable, which means that they're not doing the things that lead to this like compounding stuff over time. And it's like, it's a really dangerous cycle. I think that like it's, Brendan, I'm forgetting his last name, and I feel really bad because he's very adamant about getting credit for what I'm about to say. Oh God, I have to look it up. Brendan Hufford. I could not remember his last name. He talked about this thing he calls checkbox marketing. That teams fall into this pattern of like, they're only doing things because people say these are things marketers have to do. Like, you need a newsletter. Great. Well, we need a newsletter because marketers say I need a newsletter. Checkbox, right? It's like, but it also means that they're only doing the things where the checkbox can be measured, right? Okay, I can track newsletter, X amount of subscribers. Great. I can track webinar, X number of attendees, right? It's like, but like organic social, small dinner events, other word of mouth stuff, like I can't track it, so I'm not going to invest in it. And the problem is then because like their boss won't give them credit because it's not trackable. And I think a lot of sales and marketing teams would do better on the medium to long term if they took 20% of their time and budget and knowingly put it into things that were not going to be trackable or be classified as experiments or whatnot. Because also, like, once you stop experimenting, that's the beginning of the end for every company and team. As soon as you stop learning, trying, experimenting, it might take 3 years, it might take a decade before you die, but you die. And it's like the You know that saying of like societies grow great when old men plant trees whose shade they will never enjoy. I
Yeah.
think that applies to companies too, where like people know like I'm not going to be here in 5 years, so whatever. Like as long as I hit my goals this quarter, I don't give a fuck, right? Like I don't care about the long term. But like companies succeed when leadership makes decisions that might make impact long after they've left the company.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. I think that one of the reasons companies fall into this error trap is they're like, okay, there must be some software I can buy that will help me. And then I need to only buy software if it's got a clear ROI. So therefore, this software is telling me it tracks the outcome that I'm interested in. You hear from people that are like, yeah, we know the Google like AdWords numbers are just made up. Like we know
Google has
that
been
like it's
sued for that being fraudulent multiple times, again and again and again.
yeah. But the ROI is here's the number you paid us X, you got Y back. So therefore, on paper, we delivered the value. You should put more money into us. It's like, no,
I
this is
think a lot
broken.
of leaders and managers are more concerned with things being measurable than things being effective.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that is just really, really dangerous. It's once again, might work this quarter, might work next quarter. It's not going to work in 2 years. And everybody is thinking on this short-term mindset. Like I understand why businesses run quarter to quarter. And I understand why you need to balance short-term goals and long-term goals. But I just think this drive of if it works this quarter, I don't care. It's so damaging. It's so damaging.
Yeah, I completely agree. Let me jump us to now another
Bumping
post.
up on time. So do you want to skip the next one? I think we can save that one for another time because we're running out on time here and talk about the email warm-up post.
Yes, let me get
I think this
to
is
it.
an interesting one that I think falls into this like measurability category a little bit.
This is Patrick, isn't it? Yes, perfect.
Yeah, it's just from Patrick Spielman.
And here we go.
So have you used much like email warm-up stuff yet?
No, so I've been bitten on the other side. I've been at companies where like we hired old school sales reps that just went into HubSpot and sent the same email to 15,000 people. And then we were like,
that
wow,
worked 7 years ago.
Yeah. So I know it's super important. I see people bragging about how they can warm up 15 different domains, and that seems to be a big thing now. But walk us through it.
I don't think a lot of people actually know how the sausage is made when it comes to email warm up, right? Like, one thing, like it kind of comes like it's actually what I wrote about today. Is like everybody's looking for the next tactic or the next hack, and they're like, "Oh, well, I saw insert XYZ sales leader I follow say email warm up is how I do it." So I'm just like, I just did it, but they don't actually understand why they're doing it or what's actually going on behind the scenes. Basically, long story short, and once again, like I'm not super technical on this, so I might like butcher a few details here or there, but in general, you should go look this up. If you send cold email, you should understand how it works, not just what someone on LinkedIn tells you to do. If you want to be great at your job, you will go behind the scenes. You won't just stay at this. That's whether it's cold email, cold calls, networking, creating content, doesn't fucking matter, right? But like email providers, Gmail, et cetera, have been cracking down on email spam. And even if you're not in a buying decision or a buying seat, but especially if you're a buying seat, you know what I'm talking about. Like my inbox is borderline unusable. Like 7 months ago, we were debating like that we should drop Slack because Slack is like not actually that great for remote communication. And one of our team members was like, "Yeah, let's just use email." And I was like, I can't do that. I know you can as an engineer because like email inbox is not that used, but like I will lose messages from our team, even though I have filtering rules. Like my inbox is not a thing I can just like use for critical communication reliably because it's fucked by cold email. But so email service providers have been cracking down on it. There's some new rules where it's like, sending Gmail accounts, it's like limited to like 50 a day or 100 a day. I don't remember what it is, right? So what people have started doing is they started buying new domains where it's like, instead of sending email from comstor.com, I will buy with comstor.com and from comstor.com and, about comstor.com and like all these variations. And I'll send emails from that because if one of those emails gets dinged for spam, the worst thing that could happen would be your main domain being put into spam. Then it's like, now my verify your email for signing up email goes to spam. Now your like marketing newsletter goes to spam. You're like, holy shit, like that's really bad, right? Like you've ruined what's actually more important than cold outbound, which is communicating to the people who've already opted into communication from you. They get dinged. So email warm-up is basically like, you can buy this new domain, but now it's a brand new domain. So these email service providers are more likely to look at it as spam. Because it's like, if you just started like buy a new domain and on day one, you're like, here's 100 emails. It's like, whoa. Like that's what spammers do, right? And this is, I'll come back to that in a second, because that's kind of like a big thing you and I have talked about, Christian. So email warm-up is basically, they will send a bunch of like, not like fake emails, but like kind of fake emails from that domain. They'll slowly build up how many they're sending to build like authority on that domain. So it's less likely to look at as spam. But the way they're building that authority is by sending spam, because by default, an email that doesn't have a purpose is spam, right? And the problem is they're done through email warm-up pools, which is what this post is referencing, right? Where it's like, I'm going to use a tool, like insert whatever tool to do email warm-up. But guess what? 5,000 other people are using that same tool to do email warm-up. So suddenly that tool starts setting off spam filters because they're doing too much of the same thing. It's like, it's basically any of these things, once they get too big or too common, they trigger the same thing they were trying to avoid in the first place.
It's crazy to me. Surely it is just a matter of time. It just feels like the walls are closing in and you're having to come up with more and more elaborate schemes to get around it. But each scheme, like you said, more people then funnel into, because there's less different ways you can do it, which then just makes the scheme get found faster.
Yeah, it's like the analogy, I've said this 1,000 times, so I sound like a broken record. I end up beating a dead horse and broken record. One saying there. I like that. I sound like a broken horse. But it's like, it's the analogy of like the Thelma and Louise analogy, right? Of like, you're in a car and you know it's heading towards a cliff, but you're still debating how to make the car go faster, which in turn is actually getting you closer and closer to the cliff. And this, what Patrick was referring to in this post, is that like, he's noticed that some of his warm-up tools are starting to like not work. Like the pools have been tainted because like too many people are using them. Now, caveat, Patrick also sells a tool for doing email warm-up. So like there's an incentive for him to claim that other email warm-up tools are not working. But the comments were very much agreeing with him. Because you get people like, oh yeah, I switched from this tool to that tool. I just switched from this tool to that tool, etc. Yeah, like Eric right there, I had to completely migrate my whole system because the warm-up was bugged and was burning domains. So like, but that's a short-term solution, right? It's like Eric moves his domains to another pool. Guess what? When everybody else moves to that pool, you're going to have to do it again. It's like, it's a game of cat and mouse. And it's like, it's, I don't know. It's like the, we were, Always Sunny in Philadelphia, of like the Pepe Sylvia scene where he's got this like crazy scene behind like this thing, this. He's like, it's like, oh my God, you need this tool to this tool. It's like, I see these things shared on LinkedIn and they're like, you need like a PhD to follow this like insane system people have built to get around rules, essentially.
Yeah. And also to get around, like, that person doesn't want to receive that email. Like they've opted into all of this protection. Like it's not like some mean person is blocking you from reaching this person. This person's company has said, we're investing in our IT budget to stop these emails coming through. So it's not like the world is against you. Like the person that you're trying to reach is like, like you just said, I can't use my inbox. I don't want to receive these spam emails.
But it's not just email. It's like, it's all this advice of like, Sam McKenna had a great post yesterday of like, so much modern sales advice feels like, here's how to trick your buyer into getting on a meeting with you. And it's like, oh, if they don't pick up the cold call, just call 2 more times, double tap or triple tap them, right? It's like, so they're going to think now like, oh my God, is something wrong with my kid? This is an emergency call. And they pick up, it's like, hey, this is John from the, and you're like, what the fuck? I thought something was wrong with like no, what the hell, right? You're like, you're starting off on a bad foot, and people's excuse is always like, their pushback is always like, yeah, but it works for me. Yeah, but it works for me. And I think what we're trying to say here is, yeah, but for how long, right? It works for 3 months, and you got to change again. Then you got to change it again. You're always chasing the next tactic to beat the system versus building a good fundamental system yourself.
Yeah, there you go. And what's cool about building a good fundamental system yourself is it compounds. So the more you work on it, the better it gets, and people can't copy your system and ruin it. If you do these emails, fancy system,
and it works no matter what the hot tactic at this moment is, right? It's like, like right now, people are saying cold calls are working a bit better because email got oversaturated. But it's like, okay, so then as cold calls pick up and email drops, it'll switch in a year, right? Or whatever, right? It's like, you're always on this treadmill of like never being able to like figure out what's working or not. But you know what works always? Like word of mouth always works. Referrals always work. Content always works. Community always works. Like, and I'm not saying, like, I'm not saying you should do one or the other. Like it's, I actually said this in my video yesterday, right? Where it's like gardening versus going to the store, right? I feel like cold email, etc. Like that's going to the store to buy your stuff every single time. You got to get in the car, you got to drive down, you buy a tomato. Versus all these other tactics, like what we consider go to network, it's like gardening, right? You are like, and yes, it takes more time. It requires a little bit of like TLC. But once you have that garden going, it's self-sustaining, it's cheaper, and homegrown shit tastes better. But, and here's it's a decent thing for us to end on, I think, because we're close on time here. For 99.99999% of people, you cannot physically produce all the food you need at home. So you are always going to have to blend what can you grow at home versus what you need to go to the store for. And I think that's like, the analogy there is like, I'm not saying you shouldn't do cold email. I'm not saying you shouldn't cold call. I'm just saying that like, you can't just like rely on this system where you have to constantly be trying to like figure out how to effectively cheat in order to get around the changing rules. You need to layer in your own compounding things that work outside of those things. You need both.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then it goes on to the point of, like breaking the metaphor a bit, but if you're going to have to go to the supermarket, you're going to have to buy at some point, you're going to have to do outbound. But how can you raise the awareness so that the person knows who you are when they're reaching out? How can you make sure that they want to hear from you? How can you deliver value first?
I mean, that's the other thing too, right? Where it's like, I think a lot of salespeople specifically always forget that like a lot of times the reason a cold email or a cold call works is because the person already knows about your brand or you. And maybe it's because your marketing is doing a great job. Maybe it's because your personal LinkedIn brand. Maybe it's because somebody mentioned it, it's like you call someone, you're like, hey, Christian, you want to buy my shit? You're like, oh, I recognize Comscore. I heard about you at a dinner I was at last week. And you're like, that's why you're taking it. Like true, like actual cold outreach doesn't work well. Like the cold outreach that works is like maybe lukewarm because there is a little bit of like, it's like the classic analogy of like, don't take sales advice from someone who works at Salesforce or HubSpot, because like, if I call you, I'm like, hey, Christian, it's Mac from HubSpot. You're like, oh, HubSpot. I love you guys. Like, what do you want to share with me today? Right. It's like, versus like, hey, Christian, it's Mac from insert no name CRM here. You're like, what the fuck off? Like, I don't know who you are. I'm not interested in this. Right. Cold does not exist in a outreach does not exist in a vacuum, or at least really good outreach doesn't exist in a vacuum. Yeah.
Love it. We are 2 minutes to the hour, so we'll end it here.
Also, do we need to share? Okay, we're gonna end on a dino fact, because I did learn in Montana that T-Rexes were likely not apex predators. Because there were so many alive in a single region at a single time. Like there's too many. If you look at like historically, like how many lions, which are apex predators, exist versus hyenas exist, which are scavengers. The theory is that T-Rexes were more likely opportunistic hunters, where they might hunt a weak thing here or there or a sick thing, but they were more likely to be scavengers and eating like carcasses and things. And because they weren't very fast, so most dinosaurs would have been faster than them. And really big, slow dinosaurs would have just like killed them with their size because they're just huge. So they moved silently, and they were probably designed more for like getting smaller dinosaurs away from a corpse so they could take it instead.
Damn. Who was the apex then?
We may never know.
I'm glad we ended.
We probably have only discovered 5% of known dinosaur species, because like for sure there are all these species that just like for whatever reason the region they were in was not conducive to creating fossils. So like if you look at, there's like 3 or 4 regions in the world where we find tons of dinosaur fossils, and we basically find 0 everywhere else. So like dinosaurs that would have existed in what is now Florida, we might just never know what dinosaurs roamed in that region of the world back then, because there are just no fossils there.
I love it. I'm very glad we ended on a dino fact, because
we got to make that like a recurring thing. That's just like, that's what we end on, is like Mac's weekly dino fact.
Awesome. Mac, thanks for joining. Everyone for watching, thanks for watching. And we'll be back next week.